This podcast has been made possible by Workday.
Hi, this is Bill Kelly, CFO of Treehouse Foods, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
This is episode 859.
PwC, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, they're all building practices around us. And they also tend to give us leads. So, our purpose is to make sure, first of all, the customers we acquire as the most efficient fashion. And once we get them, make sure that they stay with us for a long time and we expand with them. That's the basic thing that drives value.
On today's show, we speak with Rajat Bahri, CFO of Icertis. It was nearly 18 years ago that Rajat Bahri stepped into the CFO office for the first time. Back in 2004, Bahri had just turned the corner on 17 years with Kraft Foods Incorporated, where after having served in a number of CFO divisional roles, decided it was time to weigh his options when it came to staying or moving on. Should I stay or should I go? It's a question that confronts many senior finance executives during the course of their career. And on today's show, Rajat Bahri looks back on the decision that swung open the door to his 18 years as a CFO. We begin after this. In a world that's always changing, one thing never does. Your need to adapt, your need to evolve, your need to grow. That's why we built Workday, a single finance, HR, and planning system that can change as your needs change and evolve as the world evolves. To learn how Workday is helping mid-size organizations embrace the future with confidence, visit us at workday.com. Hello, we're speaking with Rajat Bahri, CFO of Icertis. Rajat, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and looking forward to the conversation.
So, Rajat, we always like to begin by asking our guests to look back for us and try to identify and share some of those experiences they feel prepared them for a finance leadership role. What would come to mind for you?
So for me, it started, way back when I was growing up. In terms of, I was good with numbers, and I liked uh, logical. Logic was part of my, strengths, and I focused my education on finance, and then went to business school. That solidified my, my desire to be part of the financial organization and learning about a business and how business is run. Um, and that and if I can talk about my journey, how it developed, was after straight out of business school, I was interested. I had, as a finance person, you have a lot of choices. You can go into Wall Street, you could go into accounting. I wanted to understand how a business is run, so I joined a company called Kraft Foods, which was a global company, and they had a great program where they put finance people in different functions so you could really understand how a company operates. And I got to do a lot of different jobs in that company. I was in the financial planning and analysis. I did cost and capital. I was a plant controller, understanding how a plant is run. I moved across. I lived in Switzerland. I lived in London. I lived in Toronto. So got a very global perspective on how business works across geographies. And my, as I understood the business, how manufacturing works, how sales works, how supply chain works, how new products introduction works. So I got all those skills, and that's when they moved me to a CFO spot. I became CFO of their pizza business, which is $1 billion business, because I had now the skills and understanding how a business runs. And then I became CFO of their Kraft Canada business, which was a $3 billion business. And so I became a strong operational CFO who knew how a business works, how a business operates. And as I looked at myself and said, okay, what is missing? I had At that point, I felt that I had never managed investors, I had never raised money, I didn't know how Wall Street kind of operates. So I said I need to be a publicly company traded CFO. So I left Kraft at that point of time and came to technology and joined a company called Trimble Navigation, which was based in Silicon Valley. It was a company that was doing location-based services in commercial spaces, and it was already public. Revenue was around $600 million. And I became the CFO. The CEO was looking for a strong operational CFO who knew how business run and take the business global. So I did that, came in, became CFO, grew the business to $2 billion over 8 years, expanded market cap, did a lot of acquisitions, and really learned how to manage Wall Street. How do you set guidance? How do you make sure you deliver on guidance? I raised a revolving line of credit. So really, gained really good experiences in being able to run a publicly traded company.
Can I just jump in here too, Rajat? I just want to give our listeners a sense of the investment that you did make. First at Kraft, where, what was it? And forgive me, I just had it in front of me. Is it 13 or longer? Let's see, 18 years, excuse me. And Trimble, where you were telling us about right now, you invested 8 years there. And I just wanted to clarify, when you first arrived, you stepped right into a CFO role. Again, you're coming out of Kraft. You've had multiple very senior roles, but do you step into the CFO role there right away?
Right away, right away. I was hired to be the CFO of Trimble. Trimble was a smaller company than Kraft, and Kraft gave me a strong sense of operational experience, and it was a food business. But what's good about the finance people is they can apply their skills across different industries. So the biggest question was, can a guy move from food into technology, right? So uh, and my answer is resounding yes, because it's all about running a business. If you know how to run a business, business is business, whether it's technology business or a consumer business, and the financial people are especially adept at using their tools, no matter what the business is.
Well, that's a great background. But I'm gonna take you back a little bit because we've had a lot of executives that have come out of Intel, a lot of executives, finance leaders who have backgrounds at Pepsi, who have backgrounds at IBM. And I would love to get a sense of, as you look back and perhaps as you compare notes with other Kraft veterans, what set your experience apart, maybe from some of these other companies? And again, you described a situation that's similar, but I'm wondering if there's anything about Kraft that you feel was fairly unique or not really.
I think the thing about Kraft was that literally use finance as a strong partnership across the whole company. Whether it was manufacturing folks, whether it's sales folks, finance was used as a consulting arm to help people make better decisions. Because one of the things finance people were trained to.
Because your career extends back into the 90s and very early 90s, a lot of this transformation or finance began to play a strategic role only then. And I think even at GE, that's the case. Jack Welch's transformation was happening then. Were you seeing that happen? In other words, when you first arrived at Kraft, was it the strategic function that it was when you left?
Yeah, so Kraft was probably ahead of its times in using finance folks, and it was even ahead of GE. And in terms of using finance folks, they realized the value of the finance folks because in food business it's all about margin expansion. Margins expansion is very tough because population is growing at 3-4%. So how do you grow? Volume can grow, but really you need to expand margins. And finance people come in really handy in understanding where and how to do it. So I think they realized that earlier on, and use that skill base to help the different business partners. And then the other thing about Unique was it was fairly global company. So it was in every continent. So I really got the flexibility. Like it also, not everybody can adapt to different environments, right? Just going from New York to living in Switzerland and living in London, it gives you a lot of adaptability in terms of, all of a sudden you're working with different people, different systems, different cultures. So I gained a lot of flexibility in working in different environments. I also actually worked on plant floor as a plant controller. So moving from headquarters, now working with union workers. So I think it gave two things that I got out of that experience was ability to adapt to change and different circumstances, and this strategic arm of finance, strong grounding in that. I think those two things really helped me throughout my career as I went through different challenges.
18 again 18 years there. You mentioned to us that you were a CFO of a sort of a product line, the pizzas, and you mentioned Canada. You were CFO of a geography. Can you help distinguish those two types of experiences? Did one offer you greater insight into one area of finance or operations versus the other? I imagine they did, but it would just be interesting. um, Often we see someone with a geography or a product line, but not, one of each. You know,
Yeah, from a product line perspective, it was one of the highest growth category in the craft portfolio. So it gave me experience in dealing with a high growth category. The craft innovated the frozen pizza category, and so that was the nice thing there. But Craft Canada kind of gave me a much broader experience because it has all the different products that Kraft sold in its portfolio, from mayonnaise to ketchup to cookies to cheese, and it had its own manufacturing plants. It had its own sales force. So it was really being CFO of a company, strong company, except you don't have the corporate experience of a publicly managing Wall Street and all that kind of stuff. But you have everything else that you're managing. So that's what gave me the strong, it was like being CFO of a company, except you don't have to manage the external world.
you shared with us you got your MBA. You were undergrad at Duke and you got your MBA at Duke, if I can mention the college. I wanted to do that because you enter craft after your MBA. Would you do that differently, or would you offer advice to people differently? We see it done all different ways, but many will stop their business career and take some time off to do it. What about yourself? If you were to give advice today?
Great question. And just to one correction, my undergrad was in University of Delhi, and then I did my MBA right after my university. Went to Duke to get my MBA, and I was the youngest person there. I was 23. I was when I went and get my MBA. I was 21 years old, and average age there was 30. So in although the positive was, since I was in school, I could tackle all the classes from an intellectual perspective. Became easy to me because it was a direct, straight from undergrad to business school, right? So strong, from that perspective, it was a big advantage versus people who had left and come back after 10 years. But I have to say, it's better to work, 3 to 5 years and then go get your MBA. Because in hindsight, I probably would have gotten more out of business school if I had that practical knowledge and then applying, the intellectual knowledge to that. So, it was easier for me, but as I look back, if I was going to advise my kids or anybody else, I would say get some practical experience. You will get more out of your business school classes. Otherwise, it's very, very theoretical. So that would be my advice.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for that. We always like to sort of put a lens on that segue because it is a CFO role. You mentioned an operations executive who you work closely with, perhaps. But when you came to make that decision, why was this the right move? We know that during that 18 years, there were other opportunities that you said no, thank you to. Why was this the right one? Was it the individual? You could see how you could fit into the management. Was there something more to it?
Yeah, I think I really wanted to be CFO of a publicly traded company. That was my goal. And for me, I could have stayed at Kraft for another 8 to 10 years and get there. But my thinking was, if I stay 8 to 10 years and if I don't get that job, then I have become stale. It'll be tough to make any changes. So, one of the things I always tell people is always never let you be stale. Always think 5 years ahead. And that to me was very important. I thought that was my moment. I had a goal, and the opportunity came along, and I jumped at it because it not only got me a different experience, a different industry, but my skill base increased. If you don't continuously improve your skill base, get some change, your career becomes stale and then becomes very difficult. I see so many people who get into their 40s and then they're stuck. And it's always good to have a long-term vision of where you want to be, and then a plan how to get there.
With Trimble now, you joined as the CFO, as you explained. You're there 8 years. Can you give us a sense of how that company grew over that period, or some of the milestones that were achieved during that period? And I believe you had begun to do that when I interrupted you, wanting to look back at your Kraft years.
So Trimble, when I joined, was doing around $600 million in revenue, and when I left the company, we were doing $2 billion in revenue. So we grew the company organically. We expanded in different geographies. We did a lot of technology tuck-in acquisitions to expand the adjacencies that we were in. So we expanded our market TAM by getting into some adjacencies. So basically, organic growth, some adjacency growth through acquisitions, and some global growth. That's what we focused on, and then we also focused on improving margins. Making company more and more profitable every year.
Was it publicly held when you joined?
Yes, it was. It was publicly held when I was joined.
I imagine you had some investor relations experience, or did you try to get it within Kraft before you made this move?
No, I did not have any investor. That's the experience I wanted. So I had the investor relations reporting into me, treasury reporting into me, full-fledged CFO job, right? So the reason I took the job was I felt that I didn't have that skill base, and here was an opportunity. And the CEO was looking for a guy who a strong operational guy who can help the company scale up, put the processes, infrastructure in place to help him scale the business, improve profitability. And he felt that my Kraft experience would really help him do that. So it was a win-win. He got a guy, strong operator, and I got my desire of learning IR, learning how to manage the street, the investors. So to me, it was a strong win-win. It was a great kind of a marriage from that perspective.
So I interrupted you a bunch of times here. I could go any number of directions. So I'm going to just allow you to take us forward. I know there were several CFO roles, but again, you invested another 8 years at Trimble, which I think, and you shared with us how that company grew underneath the management over that period. Pretty remarkable. But other CFO roles. And then, of course, I just want to give our listeners, you're rather new at Icertis, where you joined only last August, from my notes here, if I have that correct. But how did I do, and what else would you like to share with us? Yeah.
Yeah, so the later part was very different, right? So I joined the startup world after Kraft was a $30 billion company, Trimble 600 million going to 2 billion. And again, this fear of becoming stale was with me. I was like, okay, what can I do to enhance my skills? And I could have gone to a bigger company and becoming a CFO. I said, hey, I'm in the Silicon Valley. Wouldn't it be fun to take a company public? So I joined a company that was doing, $80 million of revenue, and had two finance people. At Trimble, I had 130 finance people. And I joined a startup called Jasper. And it was enterprise software in IoT space. And I said it'll be fun to take a company public and build a thing ground up versus inheriting an organization working. So I did that. We filed an S1. We did a couple of rounds, and we were on a road to take the company public. But we got a really good offer from Cisco to buy the company. So we ended up selling the company. So I got my startup experience there. Then I went to another startup called Wish that we scaled from $400 million to $2 billion, and actually we took it public and raised $1 billion. And then I did two more startups after that, a company called IDMe, and then my current company called Icertis that I just joined in August. So,
Wow.
in the last, decade of my career, it's been startups. So
Remarkable. So again, you moved into tech, no problem, it seems, from the food sector, and also into the entrepreneurial world eventually as well. These are, you have medium-sized companies, you have large enterprise, and you have the really startups. Tell us something as you reflect on the types of roles you've played in each of these different size businesses now. Is it all finance? Is it all, is one more strategic in your mind than the other? Is there more storytelling muscle required for the startup? One might imagine. Don't know.
yeah, I mean, startup is, you and every founder is different in a startup, right? I mean, every founder is a vision, but has a different personality, and so you need to be able to add value. There's nowhere to hide in a startup. You need to add value. And what has helped me is because I've been a strong operator, I can be a really good advisor. I've pretty much seen it all, honestly. I've done food, I've done hardware at Trimble, I've done software at Jasper, I've done e-commerce. Then I've done the security company called IDMe, and now I'm at a SaaS company called Icertis. So it enables me to be a strong partner with the whole management team actually. And most of this management team, most of them are never taken a company public. They don't know how it's like. So I can help in that process, just transforming the culture, the processes, all of that. So I become a very strong partner to the management team in these things, and that's what I enjoy. I love doing that. Every day is different. And in startup, you're basically running the whole thing with the CEO, and actually helping the CEO in a lot of things which he's not exposed to. So just the level of fulfillment is huge.
Well, I'm afraid we've got to move to the business segment of our interview. I threw quite a few extra questions there to you, but couldn't resist given the interesting background that you outlined for us. Let's find out about Icertis. What does this company do, and really, what are its offerings today?
So Icertis is a company that basically digitizes the contracts. Contracts are foundation of commerce. It is every transaction, whether you're doing sales, whether you're doing procurement, whether you're doing legal, whether you're hiring people, everything is memorialized in a contract. And how do you extract all that information, digitize it, and provide intelligence around it and integrate it into different systems, all this information that exists in the contracts? So this is the first company that has been able to do it at a very broad scale. And I've been a CFO for, as we talked about, my career for a while. And when I heard about this company, I was like, where was this? I would have gotten so much value if I had something like this in my toolkit. Um, and so that's what's exciting about. That's what we do. We do the whole contract lifecycle management from beginning to the end. We digitize the contract. We provide insights into the contracts. We make sure that what was promised in the contract is delivered. And so that's what the company does.
Can you tell us, maybe give us an abbreviated history of its capital structure, where it is today?
Sure. So the company was founded by Samir Bodas and Manish around 10 years ago, but probably more like 12 years ago. And over time, the company has raised, capital through, traditional VCs like Meritech, through Fidelity has an arm called Eight Roads, and PSP. So a bunch of VCs have put money in the company, and then last year SoftBank put some money in the company, and then our latest round was led by a strategic partner, SAP. Earlier this year, where it's not only an investment they put in the company, but we are now combining our products and going to the market with combined products. So it's a very strong partnership relationship with SAP, and they put some money. So that's a little bit background on the company's historical cap structure.
So, at a company this size, I always ask this question about whether you're reorganized finance but as you step into this company and having stepped into so many different companies, different sized companies, as you look to create a function that will serve the growth that this company expects clearly, can you share with us, what are the steps you're taking? Is it it might be a few significant hires. It might be structuring it with the FP&A team playing a different role. I don't know. Can you share anything with us as to how you plan to organize finance?
Yeah, there are two things, as I mentioned before, that the finance needs to play a strong strategic role in the company's direction, vision, and so I'm beefing up the FP&A function with those capabilities to able to support the growth and then take the company to more efficiencies, more profitability over time. So really partnering with all the different business partners and having a long-term vision where we need to be and how we get there. So the FP&A role, FP&A team, I'm beefing it up significantly, and they're going to start playing a very strong strategic role there. And then, on the infrastructure side, the accounting side, making sure we're ready for a public company kind of infrastructure. We can close the books on time, and that's a journey, right? It requires automation. It requires the right people. It requires the right processes and policies. So we are putting those things in place and building that organization that when we go public, whenever that moment be, we are ready to do that. So those are the two big elements. And then the third element I would say is just, if we need capital, fundraising, that muscle, also focusing some time there. But in general, it starts with making sure you have the right team. I mean, that's like, you go in and you want to make sure that your team and the team below is A+. And that's been my focus, is making sure we have the right people to run these functions.
But can you share with us, as you try to get a read on this business, what are the KPIs and the measurements you're paying close attention to? Wondering, when you come in, is there something that you're observing closely, that you're looking at every day? Is this getting in line where we want it? I don't know. Anything like that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, you're familiar with the typical SaaS metrics, right? Making sure that our paybacks, our LTV to CAC kind of scenarios, and our churn rates, our NRR, all those are typical SaaS metrics that we measure ongoing. But it's really about making sure, ultimately it comes down to, when you get a new customer, you get it most efficiently that you can, and then you keep them around and you expand, you get a strong LTV from that customer, right? So that's where we're focused on. How can we acquire the customer in the best efficient fashion? We have a huge partner ecosystem that we have developed around us. As I mentioned, SAP is helping us, giving us leads, which are much more efficient. We have 4 of the 5 SIs as our strong partners. So PwC, Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, they're all building practices around us. And they also tend to give us leads. So, our focus is to make sure, first of all, the customers we acquire as the most efficient fashion. And once we get them, make sure that they stay with us for a long time and we expand with them. So your LTV, so that's the basic thing that drives value. And there are a bunch of things we can do to make the acquisition much efficient, and a lot of things we can do to make the LTV much better. And those are the type of things we are focused on.
Is there perhaps a metric or some business dynamic that you have sought to better educate the organization about? Or is there something you've sought to say, hey, we've got to watch this regularly and make more visible?
Very good point, and this is very pertinent in the current environment, right? So, uh, as you know, most of the market is now moving, rewarding more profitability, more efficiencies in the current space, right? So,
Right.
one of the kind of principles I live with, and it's very simple, but it takes time for people to get used to it and actually execute to it. It's really a simple thing. It's like you will grow your revenue every quarter, right? Because in a SaaS model, you get more bookings. You will grow your gross margins every quarter. And you want to make sure that your operating expenses grow at a much lower rate than that growth.
Mm.
And that's the only way you're going to become a profitable company. It's simple, but that requires discipline. That requires buy-in from everybody. And you need to just make sure your operating expenses are growing at a slower rate than your revenue and gross margin dollars. And that is, I watch it like a hawk every month. And I work with, first of all, you really make sure that there's collaboration, everybody buys into that. And once you buy into that, I watch that as a hawk. And that's where you see improvement. It's beautiful. It's like a painting. Like every month you see improvement, to burn rates, in your efficiencies, in your margins. And that's the mantra that I live with is, kind of, that's how I manage the business. Now, there'll be some times where you have to make some investments. So, but that's okay, fine. Long term, there should be good payback on that. So, yeah, there's some exceptions sometimes, but that's the framework that I have put in place.
And what I'm curious about, or what I'm always trying to discover, is how finance leaders are influential in terms of behaviors across the organization, and how by making a certain number or bringing something to the workforce's attention in a new and different way. And I'm wondering if you do it any differently than you did maybe 10 years ago. These tools are allowing you to do that supposedly. I don't know, but and I'll be quiet. I'm sorry.
What I've seen, couple of things I would say to that. What I've seen is a lot of automation and tools have come in place where and data governance structures have come into place that you get information real time. And I'm a strong believer in getting information real time, because if you don't know where you are, it's impossible to course correct. And if you're always like, so as a finance person, you really need to know at any particular moment where the business is. You need the pulse on the business. So then you can guide, like you can see around the corner saying, okay, this is the problem I'm seeing now. How do I work with this function or this place to course correct it? So it really starts with, knowing where you are very precisely. And then you can course correct things in a timely fashion. That's one thing that I pay a lot of attention on. The second is you need to make sure that you have a buy-in, because you can't do it alone. You really need a buy-in from all the function heads. And typically in a SaaS, what I have done and what I've started doing here is uh, benchmarks. Benchmarks are available for best of class, SaaS companies. They're available on, what was Salesforce like when they were our scale? What was Workday like when they were our scale? Right. So we have best of class, and then you compare. Here, this is where we are, and this is what best of class is. And obviously, we want to be best of class. In some places, we are there. In some places, we clearly are not. And then, this is the data. There's no, like, it's publicly available. I'm not making it up. And we want to be best of class. So let's talk about how to do it. So that's the journey that, we need to, that's how you bring the whole team together. You kind of, people will challenge data, make sure your data is solid. And once people get comfortable with data and this is what it is, then you see strong alignment. Okay, then it comes into how you're going to get there. So that's kind of the things I'm doing in the company.
Excellent. Thank you. I just want to quickly touch on talent with you. It's been a top of mind issue for many finance leaders. And again, in the tech sector, we're hearing about layoffs now. And it wasn't 6 months earlier, we were talking about hiring challenges. So things have changed quite a bit in a short amount of time, certainly. But when it comes to talent, and again, I'm thinking more broadly, not just at Icertis, but the role finance leadership plays today. And you know this from looking back in time. Has it changed? Or do you find yourself spending more time with maybe the chief people officer or more time considering the compensation structure across the company? I don't know, but when it comes to talent, what would you tell us? Is it the same? Is it a little different? What's your mindset?
Yeah, from an Icertis lens, we luckily we have been seeing a lot of growth even in this environment. We'll still grow, our ARR 45-50% this year, and so we didn't have to face what other companies are facing, some of the slowing growth and so forth. So we've been lucky from that perspective. It's just a great growing category. Uh, but what I would say is, on a talent side, what we're seeing lately, I mean, is, how do you make this hybrid environment where people are, working remotely, uh, and especially, we've had around 800 people in the last 12 months. How do you bring cohesiveness? How do you become, teamwork? So those are the type of things we are paying attention to, is how to make those people productive. How do you, new people absorb new people in a company where, people are now mostly remote. So our focus has been, how do you build relationships? Even in finance, I have a very remote team. I have people in India, I have people in Europe, I have people all over the US. So that's something new that has emerged over the, I would say, last couple of years post COVID, is people just don't want to come back to offices. And how do you build the relationships and the camaraderie? So a lot of focus on that.
We're going to jump to our finance strategic moment question. And this is where I just say anytime during the course of your career, we're looking for a moment of insight that you experienced as a finance leader. We know that you have about half dozen daily, but we're just looking for one that you might share with us that reveals how finance played a strategic role. Maybe it was a risk that you avoided. Maybe it was an opportunity that was pursued because of what you saw, your lines of sight allowed you to see. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think there's not a moment, but it's a journey that I was an aha moment that I realized along the way. Um, and and you see that, and it took me 3-4 years to get to that. You could be the smartest analyst, you know, and be crunching numbers, but if you can't take it to the next level on advising what those things mean and how you can add value by your insights and change the course of uh, the actions that business is taking, that's where the finance people can really play a great role. And everybody needs to be literally conscious of that, that their job is just not crunching numbers or paying bills or doing something. It is, what can we do to, if it was my own business, what would I be doing? So that was, to me, that mindset, when it came along, it just kind of enhanced everything I did. And it takes some conscious effort and recognizing that you need to do it day in and day out. And uh, and and I started measuring my success, like, if my business partner, how many times does he call me for advice? How many times, if he just calls me once in a while to say, what is, what is this spreadsheet say, that's, I failed. But if he calls me twice a day to brainstorm, hey, how can you help me, I'm thinking about that, uh, that would just, be a much better experience. So to me, that was kind of earlier on the realization in my career, was, how can I add value based on what I'm doing to the business. To me, that was a big, that enhanced my career significantly. And so that's what I would point to, was my kind of, I see smartest people fail because they just don't take that step.
Hi, it's Jack. I hope you're enjoying our talk with CFO Rajat Bahri of Icertis. I kind of enjoyed that. I thought he said that well. Smart people fail because they don't take that next step. What's that next step? Making a conscious effort to add value. Again, he explains it took him a while to really understand that it was a conscious effort that needed to be made, that he had to think about it every day as he went into the office. Great moment of insight for us. We'll now return to the mentoring round with CFO Rajat Bahri. We're going to jump to our mentoring round now, where I get to ask you several quick questions intended to inspire and inform future finance leaders. I really want to ask you this first question, because I think you shared, we went over your years at Kraft Foods and when you stepped into that role at Trimble. But just thinking back to that first quarter again, you were a highly experienced finance executive, already had multiple CFO roles inside business unit CFO roles. But this was the first time really that it was all on your shoulders, everything investor relations, as we already talked. If you could just think back for us, think about that first month at Trimble, that first 60 days, and go back in time and just give yourself a piece of advice. There was something that was missing, maybe something that you wish someone had whispered in your ear. What would it have been?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say is, like, always I was too stressed to make it work, and and there was no reason for that stress. If you're doing the right things, just have fun learning, and enjoy it a bit. I was just so stressed on making the change and making it work. I could have had more fun, and with less stress. So yeah. So if I go back to my younger stress, it's like, a bit more balance, keep things in perspective, have fun doing what you're doing and learning what you're doing, um, and that's what I would have advised that person is, just a bit more balance. Don't be too stressed about things, and enjoy it a bit more.
Well, thank you for that. Different guests have identified periods in their career where they experienced a great deal of stress, and job segues is one, by far, I think the most common when you're in a completely new environment. How do you operate? So thank you for that. We do get also some CFO guests have shared some ideas about how they deal with stress, which is this is a good part of the podcast to talk about that. Also, we always like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side of things, which is uh, we're looking for something that sets you apart, Rajat. Something people know about you. That's how Rajat does it. He does it his way. We're not looking for it's either a habit or part of a daily routine that you have. Something people, again, something that sets you apart, perhaps from others. Anything come to mind for us that you can share? Might be something a family member would tell us. Something they know you well enough.
Yeah.
This is how he does it.
I think I just the way I work with my teams is I treat them as equals, and we are in it together and solving this together. Um, and so I spend a lot of time in making sure that we have the right team and we work very, very well together. So they're not stressed out about kind of what I'm thinking or any agenda. It's more about getting the work done, and we are all in it together. So I think I bring a very transparent style of working, with the whole team, and I'm typically open about every challenge that we are facing, good or bad. So I think what sets me apart is a very, very transparent and open style of working.
Was that style something you acquired at Kraft originally, or was it something as you became a leader at Trimble and these other CFO tours duty that you developed? Do you think, or was it something less
I think I had
over time?
I had to develop it just because I did had to go through a lot of change in my life, right? From moving different countries to different businesses, and the only way you are going to be successful is if you are open about what you don't know and you're open about what you know. And so I think that probably brought up this, open collaborative style, because I cannot succeed without other people. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. So I think that probably, to be successful, I had to be open and willing to learn and be in it together with them. I think that's what probably matured that style of working.
Rajat, will you have a book recommendation for us?
Yeah, I really like this book called Seven Habits of Effective People by Stephen Covey. And it's just, gets bit more discipline in how you work. There's some good insights in there. So I would encourage people to read that.
That's a nice selection. We haven't had it in a while, but it seems to be popular among finance people. Why is that, do you suppose?
It's practical. It's easy to read. Finance people work in a lot of chaos around the company, and then also it brings some sort of a method to deal with it. So I think that's why some finance people grab, because finance people are smart, right? I mean, they are smart. Most of the finance people, they understand numbers, they understand logic, they understand. So then it becomes really about having good habits and some discipline and approach things. So I think that's why it's helpful.
We are going to ask you finally to look forward for us over the next 12 months. And we'd like to know what your priorities are as CFO of Icertis.
So we have a lot of growth ahead of us, and we are a category leader. And For me, it's kind of grow company in the most efficient manner we can is my goal, and then set us up, as a company to go public at some point in the whenever markets open up. That we are experiencing great growth, great efficient growth. We have the infrastructure ready to go public. At least we have the option. So basically, it's getting efficient growth, support the growth, put the infrastructure in place to take the company public. Those are my priorities for the next 12 months.
Rajat Bahri, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks for having me, Jack. Appreciate it.
Hello, listeners. Do us a favor. Be certain to subscribe to CFO Thought Leader on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an Android user, check us out on Spotify or Google Play. If you like the show, please recommend it to a friend.